Excellent. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us today. We are going to dive into ACUE's course on effective teaching practices and hear from various participants about their experiences in the course. As I had mentioned before I started recording, most everybody in this room has some experience with ACUE, either taking the course, facilitating the course, or both. And so thank you all for spending some time with us today, and hopefully other people who pop in to learn more about ACUE will take a lot away from your experiences, and certainly in the event that we are able to continue offering this opportunity to our faculty, they'll be able to look back on this account and hear about your time in ACUE. So just to briefly introduce, so ACUE refers to the Association of College and University Educators. I think it's educators, and of course my typo says educations. And they have developed, among other courses, they've developed a course on effective teaching practices. This is a full, what they would call a full-length course or full academic year course that consists of 25 modules, right? And their goal, and the goal for all the people who participate in this course, is to advance effective instruction and promote student success. And so there are 25 modules that are spaced out across an academic year for faculty to participate in. And we work with the ACUE partners and coordinators to assure that the modules that we are diving into have some relevance to the timing of the academic year. So in modules such as course design elements, we try to incorporate those modules at a time where faculty are working on designing courses for future semesters. And so some of those modules include developing effective classroom sessions and lectures, teaching powerful note-taking skills, using groups to ensure active learning, embracing diversity in the classroom, providing useful feedback. And there's, like I said, many more, 25 in total. And so at Oswego, this is currently our 4th year using a cohort model with the ACUE effective teaching practices. We're in cohort D at the moment.
Yeah, I thought we were 100% in cohort A.
One person left the university, so I don't know if that
But
person
that person was dropped. Well, okay.
I think they were officially dropped. When I calculated this out, their name was still included, so I wasn't sure
They were
if I
removed because
they were
got-
removed at some point. So we'll note that cohort A had 100% completion, and there is likely the case that some of the faculty had officially dropped out and was not part of the data set that I received from ACUE at the time. And so these numbers are probably a little bit higher depending on whether a faculty member had dropped out, but cohort B at 89%, and cohort C at 96%. So we have really high completion rates among our faculty. And we've had anywhere between, I think this current cohort is probably our smallest cohort at about 22 participants, maybe 20, 21 or 22 participants.
First time it was about 30.
Yeah, about 30 or so. So we've had, between each of these cohorts, somewhere between 20 and 30 faculty completed. So we're probably at this point looking at almost over 100 faculty who are engaged in this course. And how this typically works is that faculty work through one module per week, again, spread over the course of an academic year. Each of the modules consists of videos and readings that are showcasing various teaching practices, and also providing additional resources for faculty to read up on the effectiveness of those practices, and other guides and worksheets to help them engage in those practices. Faculty are then challenged at the end of the module to implement one of those practices from the week into their teaching practice or materials. And once that implementation has been complete, faculty then, as you all know, write a reflection on how that implementation went, And then each of those reflections are scored by an outside reader. And actually Jessica serves as one of those outside readers.
But not for us.
Not for Oswego,
No.
yeah, but she does serve as one of those for other campuses. And then once all of those 25 modules have been completed and the reflections have been scored, faculty are awarded a certificate in effective teaching practices. All right, so we want a little, we wanted to get to know a little bit about the current cohort and to talk about your experiences. And so if everyone doesn't mind, we can just kind of briefly go around and share your name, maybe the number of years you've been teaching and or at Oswego, what department, what kind of courses you teach, and what drew you to participating in ACUE. It's a tall order, so I have it written up there. So you can get back to, or you can refer to that if you need to. But for those who are participating, maybe we can start with Martin, and then we'll move to some of the remote participants as well.
And I'm Martinez Cohen. I go by Martin as well. I'm in criminal justice. I've been at SUNY Oswego for about 3.5 years, but I've been teaching for about 11 years. I just realized that. I typically teach, upper level courses. Research methods is my favorite, but also criminal profiling is something I brought with me. I decided to do ACUE because if you do it out of pocket on your own, it's like $700, and I could do it for free here. And I never received any sort of, formal training on how to teach. And so, it was available. So I took the opportunity.
Actually, there's quite a bit more than that.
Oh, really?
The short courses are 700. These
Oh,
are
sorry.
about 3,000.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Okay, well,
Yeah.
so
So saving
Yeah.
even more.
yeah.
But I think your point on that, many faculty coming out of graduate programs don't get, the opportunity to be trained in how to teach. And so it's a really good opportunity. Laura, how about you? I'll pass it off to you.
So my name is Laura Donnelly. I've been teaching at Oswego. I think this is my 10th year here, and maybe teaching for like 16 years total. I am not sure. I'm in the English and creative writing department. I mostly teach creative writing classes, poetry writing. I taught a nature writing class this past semester that I really loved. In terms of what drew me to participating, always interested in ideas for kind of energizing, re-energizing teaching. And I think I also realized that in my first years at Oswego, I got to know a lot of folks who were in the same cohort that I came in with, or in cohorts like 1 or 2 years before me or after me. And I realized that I was not so much getting to know the folks who were coming in now in new cohorts. And I liked that even in a small way, it was sort of this another connector across those different areas.
And Sari?
Hi, so I'm Sari Fordham, and this is my first year teaching at Oswego. And I realized I've been teaching for about 20 years previous before I came here. I also teach in the Department of English and Creative Writing, and I primarily teach creative nonfiction classes. And when I came here, I thought this was really cool. And I also thought that, in this year of transition where I'm coming to a new program, I'm teaching new classes, it's a really good time to fine tune and think about how to be a better teacher. I've already been thinking a lot about creating an anti-racist writing workshop space. And so it really, as soon as I saw the opportunity, I knew I wanted to participate and brush up on my skills, lean in and use the year of transition to kind of not only figure out the new university I was at, but to become a better teacher and to gain some more tools in the classroom.
Emily? I'll pass it to you.
Hi, so I am Emily Estrada. I have been at SUNY Oswego. I'm in my 3rd year now, but I've been teaching for about 12 years in the college classroom. I am in the sociology department, and I teach lots of different courses, intro every semester, which is one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to be a part of ACUE, is because I could always use help figuring out how to best engage students in an intro to sociology gen ed course. I also teach classes on immigration, a couple of different ones. I've taught gender, research methods, which I also really enjoy. I wanted to participate in ACUE. I had heard so many really great things about it from previous cohort members. To be honest, I don't think that I was super enthusiastic about it. I just kind of took everybody else at their word. They kept telling me that I would get a lot out of it. And I will say that so far my experiences have certainly proven that to be the case, that I have gotten a lot out of it. So I'm glad that I trusted other people's advice on that.
And Eve?
Hi, I'm Eve Clark, Benavides. I am in the sociology department. I think I might have been in the same cohort with Laura. At least I feel like I was. So I guess I think I have finished 10 years now. And I teach a wide range of sociology courses. I also teach intro every semester. I teach globalization courses. I teach race, class, and gender, prejudice and discrimination, popular culture. I'm sure there's others in there that I'm not remembering. What drew me to ACUE is I always have been very passionate on staying on top of teaching techniques. I always try to get involved with the reading group, and I just felt like this would be a good structured way to like re-examine how I'm teaching in different environments. And like Emily, I had heard good things about it. I did not sign up. I had no idea Emily was doing this, so it isn't like she's trying to take this over in any means. But how long have I been teaching? I really avoided that question for a very good reason. I have been teaching since being a graduate student, so it's been 25 years, which means I am way too old to relate to my students, and I'm getting way too old to be here. But that means you can teach old dogs new tricks, I guess. So.
All right, and Michael, I wasn't sure if you were currently in an ACUE cohort. Is that the case?
I am, yes. My name's Michael Hurley. This is my 4th year teaching at Oswego. I'm in the math department. I've been teaching statistics, calculus, pre-calculus, and differential equations in the time I've been here. A colleague told me about the ACUE program and raved all about it, so I decided to give it a try. And yeah, so far it's been very interesting seeing how I can complement and adjust my techniques of what I've been doing as a teacher with what I've learned from ACUE, and just the wide variety of different courses I've seen has been an interesting experience to see how ACUE can help me adjust how I teach one course as opposed to a different course, as opposed to trying to teach everything all the same way.
All right, and so, we can certainly keep this conversation very casual. I put some questions up here just to help guide us, but, really anything you want to share about your experience is, open for this session. So, so far you've been working through the unit on active learning. And so I was wondering, and, we can just open it up to everybody. And if you want to chime in, share your experience. I was curious, what module had resonated with you the most and why, or anything from the program so far that, really changed your way of thinking or just stood out to you that you wanted to share.
Any of us, or
Anyone, go for it. Michael, if you want to go for it.
yeah, I
Okay,
guess
then maybe
one
Sarah.
module that's resonated with me is teaching powerful note-taking skills. Not just the idea of how I speak to my students and work through examples on the overhead with my students and everything, but just kind of getting to the thoughts and minds of the students themselves, because I do usually try to provide examples that the students can work on themselves or work together with me as we're working through new material in this in each lesson. But one thing I have seen in the past is that students who are not paying attention often will just take those notes that I hand out to everybody to work through, and they'll just doodle on it the whole time. And I'll have like an entire mosaic of just, sketches on it at the end of the, when they hand it back in at the end of the day, to basically say that they weren't paying attention. So I think the note-taking skills kind of helped out, because it resonated with me in the idea that, students who have this sort of problem with paying attention or have this artistic expression inside them can maybe be a bit more motivated to pay attention or more motivated to take notes if I'm a bit more artistic with how I work through the examples. So I've started doing a lot more circling certain words in the example that they should pay attention to, highlighting, underlining certain things, zooming in a lot more, zooming out a lot more, sort of getting the students more, engaged for the whole note-taking process, because this is something that, I do a lot of, and I've always wondered what's a good way to get the students to, be a bit more engaged with the note-taking and the procedures behind what's being talked about. So.
Thank you for sharing. Sari, I know you had unmuted for a minute.
So something that I'm in creative writing, and when we write, we always think of our introduction and our conclusion. And to be honest, often my conclusion in class is, we're out of time, and I'm shouting out like, don't forget the reading next tomorrow and blah, 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 as everyone's gathering up their work. And the other thing I noted is the class periods here. I was teaching Monday, Wednesday, Friday were 55 minutes, and I'm used to teaching 50 minutes. And instead of thinking I can intentionally use that 5 extra minutes, I still was like, as everyone's leaving, I'm like, hey, everyone, blah, blah, blah. So I really liked the reminder, because I actually had a pedagogy class that talked about beginnings and ends of classes when I was in grad school. And then somehow I just hadn't ever, 15 years went by, and somehow that nice cohesion to the class just went out the window. So I really I wasn't always good about it. I will say that at the end of the semester, I was still sometimes shouting out, and I was like, oh, I didn't get to my, the cool thing I planned to do at the end of class. But I'm making sure I plan something for the end of class. And I think about class now as being 50 minutes, not 55 minutes. And I'll have to adjust now for Tuesday and Thursday. And so then the 5 minutes is very intentionally focused on having an end of class activity. And I thought that was, it was one of those things where I was like, of course. And why, why when I had 5 extra minutes, why wasn't I using it? Why did it just somehow get absorbed into all the very important things we were doing that day? So that was, I know that's super small, but it's something that has made a profound difference in my teaching. I'm still not perfect at doing it, but I'm thinking differently about class planning. And I always make sure that I plan something for that last 5 minutes of class.
Emily, I know you said, or you also unmuted at some point.
Yeah, well, in terms of the module that's resonated with me the most, I would second what Michael said about the note-taking module that we did earlier in the semester. I think for me, it was just kind of this epiphany where I had forgotten that part of my role as an instructor in the college classroom is to not only teach the substantive material of whatever course I'm teaching, in that semester, but also teaching students how to be good college students. And I had found myself kind of continuously frustrated, feeling like, well, they just don't know how to take notes. They're just not doing it. And then that module was kind of like, well, no, they're not doing it. And you can help them figure out how to do it. And so that was really powerful for me. I will say, I don't think that it has impacted my teaching so far, one of the things that I have found a little bit frustrating about the program, and I know that it's timed in a very purposeful way, but the lessons on note taking, some of those I feel like needed to have been incorporated in like week 1 of the semester. And so I'm very much looking forward to implementing those in a couple of weeks when we're back in the classroom. But to revisit that topic in week 10 or whatever it was when we had it in the course just felt a little bit poorly timed. So, but I am looking forward to kind of talking more about that in the upcoming semester.
And I'll add in that that's something that I still do, is go back to these modules when I'm preparing for my classes. And I'm like, okay, there was something I wanted to do. And in this semester, it was actually, I think, part of the using groups to ensure active learning. And it was using those analytic teams. I think that was the particular module on it, but so I definitely, even years past, go back and I'm like, okay, so what was that thing that I thought would have been better suited for this particular circumstance? And so I definitely encourage doing that exact thing.
And it gives you space practice, which we know enhances long-term recall. I don't think it was designed that way, but it does do that.
It can be. Emily, did you want to add something quick?
Yeah, I just had a quick question that came to mind as you were talking, Maggie. Will we have access to this course after our kind of...
We will have it at least for a year after the cohort ends. And if we have future cohorts going forward, it will continue for at least a year after the last cohort. So you're guaranteed at least 1 year of access after the course ends.
And a lot of the stuff you can download as you go through. There's
pretty much everything you can download.
So.
Yeah, and I'm doing that, systematically downloading all of the resources, but some of even like the videos, it'd be nice to be able to revisit them. I'm glad that I'll have access for a while at least.
Yeah. And Martin, did you want to share?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the focus on feedback from the students. It's sort of an overarching theme across all the modules. Before, I used to always solicit feedback from students via anonymous surveys that I'd send out, and they'd usually give me an idea of what my student evals would look like. But in this time, I sort of told the students, I even pulled ACUE up, and I said, hey, I'm in this thing, I'm trying to become a better teacher, I want you all to give me straight up feedback. And so after I would try something like a discussion, like I tried some of these new discussion techniques, and be like, all right, what worked, what didn't work. And after some time, the students became very comfortable with giving me feedback, to the point where they were just giving me feedback all the time, which sometimes is good, sometimes is not. But it actually reflected in my student evals at the end of this year, where some students in the comment section said, he's very sincere. He's always open to feedback. He doesn't think he's perfect. And, we really appreciate that. So that's something that's very much helped. And it's sort of like this procedural justice approach to teaching, where you're like, hey, look, this is what I'm going through as a professor, as a professional. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. I learned this thing in this module, so I want to try it out on you all. And then they think it's cool that I'm doing that, first of all, but some of the stuff really worked, especially with discussions. I think that was probably my weakest area, is generating thoughtful discussion. And the students mentioned there were some days where we had great discussion in class. So
excellent. Eve or Laura?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eve.
I was going to say the one that, I've liked all of them for different reasons. There's been some good reaffirming some of the things I've always done and never really thought about as being, but the thing that I really stood out to me in the class discussions was assigning the different roles to people. Like, I thought that, I had always tried to kind of do that, but having that really laid out was really kind of like, yeah, that really makes a lot of sense. To just to do that for all the group discussions, because I use a lot of group teaching, especially my upper division courses. So I really, really like that module, and I thought it gave a lot of really good advice.
And my comment actually kind of links to that. In terms of discussion, I think a lot of my classes are smaller, they're discussion based, and I often felt like discussion was going well because in a class of maybe 22, I'd have like 10 students talking a lot. And that feels when you're in the room like there's a good discussion, but that can mean half the students are not discussing. And so I feel like I've been more attentive to that and also using groups in ways to make better spaces for some of those other students to participate in discussion, not just prioritizing like full class discussion. And similar to Eve, like assigning reporters, but letting them know as they go into the group, after discussion, I'm going to call on one of your members randomly to report out. So everybody needs to be ready kind of for that. So I think in terms of what has changed is probably that percentage of different voices coming in to discussion.
That's great. Anything else on that point, or? You know, so you've gone through 6 modules at this point, and we're actually gearing up to get restarted.
Leading the first day of class.
Yes, leading the first day of class
Yeah.
is fast
It aligns nicely
approaching.
with- yeah.
Yeah, and you know, so in that across those 6 modules, you would have been asked to then implement 6 techniques, and I was curious, you know, of that process, was anything particularly challenging? Did you have some successes in implementing those? I know we sort of briefly talked about it. Eve talked about assigning those, roles, and Martin talked about, some of those facilitating that class discussion, but do you want to share maybe in more detail or tell us what went well and what didn't?
Well, like, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Facilitating class discussions for me has been successful and a challenge. For one thing, some of the classes I teach don't lend themselves very well for discussion because they are, very low level mathematics courses with students who are not particularly engaged. They're just taking the class because they need a math class to graduate. And so they are not particularly interested in discussing. They're not particularly interested in participating. And when they are grouped together with others, they don't really do a whole lot of the work, even when I do tell them that everybody in the group needs to be ready to answer just in case I call anyone. And there's also the matter of geography in some of the courses that I've taught. Some courses you can move the tables, and some courses you can't move the tables. And so the students, do not want to move out of their table. They want to just stay in the place that they are. And so, some courses, like my college algebra course, my pre-calculus course, they were a challenge as far as getting engaging class discussions going. Other courses like my my business calculus and my differential equations course, where the seats are already kind of set up for pairs and for groups of individuals, there's been success there in getting the students to discuss and to work together and to engage with more meaningful discussion with each other during the classroom. Yeah, sorry about that, Eve.
Oh, no, I was really just couldn't unmute myself because, we have only been on Zoom for how many years now?
20.
So like, we had, someone had mentioned earlier, I think it was about like the ending, and I'm like shouting things out the door as people go. And I really thought, having the timer, getting prepared to have a formal conclusion, all that, I tried all of that. And I teach on Tuesday, Thursday. So I always am kind of racing the clock, it feels like. I know it's weird because it's a longer period, but it just feels like I'm racing more than I used to when on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I have the time, everything else, and I still mess up the ending. So I feel like that has not gone so well, whereas the discussion stuff went much better.
So some changes that I've made, include allotting more time for discussion in my classes. So where I maybe pare back, I sort of went through some of my lectures and my lecture notes, and I said, okay, well, they're gonna encounter this in the textbook when I assign the reading. So what I would do is if I wanted them to focus on one piece of content that I won't have time to discuss in class, then I'd make the reading essay that they have to do based on that, so that they're still wrestling with that content, but I might not introduce it to them in class. And so I have, in order to allot more time for discussion, I have sort of gone through, at least in 2 of my classes for next semester, how much time we're allotting for discussion, how much time we're allotting for lecture. So my PowerPoints look a little different now, and also my reading response, my sort of weekly reading assignments have changed in content in order to make sure that we still cover everything, just I won't be lecturing on it in class.
Emily, go for it.
So in terms of what has been successful, the engagement triggers that were talked about way back in like the first module, I found those to be very effective. It's something that I implemented the week that we covered that material, and I got an immediate positive response from my students. And so that was really motivating for me, especially we were kind of well into the semester at that point. So that was really encouraging. One of the things that I struggled with, and this kind of relates back to the previous comment that I made. So in terms of creating dynamic discussions and facilitating discussions, some of what that material is really about, or at least how I interpreted it, centers on setting expectations for students, and pretty high expectations in terms of what their level of engagement is going to look like during class discussions. And I, just like Laura had talked about earlier, typically when I've had class discussions, I've always felt that they were really effective. But then when I took a moment to reflect, it's really effective for like 25 to 50% of the classroom. And so then at kind of almost midpoint into the semester, to turn to the other 50% of the class who had not been engaging in discussion for the whole semester, to turn to them and to kind of increase my expectations, I feel like did not go over well. And that for that reason, I am once again really excited to start this new semester, so that I can start setting those expectations in the first day of class, in the first week of class. And I feel like setting those expectations very early on is really key to facilitating the type of engaged discussions that were talked about in that module. So we'll see.
Thanks. Anyone else want to share challenges, successes, anything that's changed?
I have noticed that the implementation of making sure to just memorize everybody's name and call their names out, or even just say, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Could you just say what your name is when when I call them in class? That has helped students sort of, open up a little bit, get a bit more, into the class, be willing to respond. I mean, that personal connection does seem to help. In the past, I would always just call on someone and say, yes, or something like that. But yes, Tyler, that does make a lot of difference. And I have seen a change in the classroom since then with that.
A couple successes from activities. One, I think this would have maybe been using the active learning cycle. I'm not sure. Sometimes I modified what they were suggesting we do so it would work in the structure of the class I already had. So if I'm not actually doing what they suggested, go with what they suggest instead. But for one of them, I had students doing a mixture of individual work and group work as they were preparing for a longer writing assignment, creative assignment that was coming up that also included some research. And they were going through different stages of that through the class. And as they were doing so, I had like 5x7 index cards I passed out, and they had little columns in them where they were putting like things they knew that were going well, next steps, concerns, or questions they had. And I collected those maybe 10 or 15 minutes before the end of class. It was a Tuesday, Thursday class. And I collected them then. Normally I would collect them at the end of class and then look them over and give them back next class. But I collected them with 10 to 15 minutes left when the students were starting to implement some of the writing things they'd said they were going to do. So they had kind of some quiet work time, which often in my head, I'm like, oh, but that's class time. We need to use this for other things. But it's like, okay, let them work. And I really quickly went through those index cards. And in doing so, there were probably like 4 or 5 students who I was able to quickly like one-on-one touch base with on their questions. In a couple cases, just to reassure them and be like, no, that thing that you're worried is no longer working and you're about to scrap the whole thing. It is working, like, don't scrap it. This is how it's working. Stay with it. And 1 or 2 others where I had to go and be like, oh, you have completely misunderstood. I did not lead with that, but like, there's a clear big misunderstanding here that I could address so that they could move forward productively instead of continuing to work with those misunderstandings for 2 or 5 days before they got that index card back from me at the next class. So it was kind of an end of class activity, but I think it was part of, yeah, again, the active learning cycle that they'd gotten to the point where they were doing that individual work. But then I was able to give feedback.
Anything else? You know, so this is just, you know, again, we can talk about it or not, but, you know, in the modules and units looking ahead, there's going to be, you know, a unit on creating inclusive and supportive learning environments, inspiring inquiry, preparing lifelong learners, which is going to talk about motivating students using advanced questioning techniques, and designing learner-centered and equitable courses. So talking about assessments and course outcomes and so forth. And so just kind of looking ahead, is there anything that you are particularly looking forward to, or any advice you'd give to others who are thinking about participating in ACUE? So if you want to share that or just talk anything else about your experiences, it is.
So,
Well, I'll is that Michael again? It's just me and Michael wanting to talk at exactly the
that
same
was me
moment.
this time. But
No, it was
Oh,
Mark.
sorry, Mark.
No, go ahead.
I guess in terms of what I'm looking forward to, I've been teaching, as I said, for a very long time. Anything that motivates students is great. And I would love to hear 50,000 more ideas of what actually works at motivating students. But in terms of for future faculty who might be interested in ACUE, I think it's really, the workshops are really good and interactive and really get you thinking, and they do it in a multiple ways. So I think it's worth your time. But just know that sometimes like it feels overwhelming a little bit. So don't feel bad about that. I think that's normal. And you look at the little small steps of advice to start putting into your classes at the pace that works for you, because there's a lot of ideas and things like that. And sometimes it can become overwhelming. So don't get overwhelmed, I guess is my advice.
Martin, did you want to?
Yeah, I would
jump in?
actually agree with that advice. Do not get overwhelmed, to sort of just season what you've learned into your existing courses. But one thing I am looking forward to is creating more inclusive and supportive learning environments. Now, I remember when my wife became pregnant, she was full-time working, and she was also working on her master's degree, and life was hard. She was struggling, and I provided as much support as I could. But when that happened, I realized, wait, I had like 3 or 4 students before, who had been in that particular position, who might not have even had partners to give them the support, right? And at that point, I started thinking more about inclusion, but that was only because it impacted my life. right? So there's things that I assume I don't know and I'm not aware of. And so I'm very excited about learning about that moving forward. In terms of advice, you know, like when I first opened up ACUE, I realized that Canvas is really cool, but also I realized like it kind of at first it looked like all that like all those mandatory things we have to learn, right? It's like, oh, this is another video with a quiz, and then it turns out it's not that. So, well, you know, don't let the first impression necessarily
Can be overwhelming.
yeah.
And I thought one of the cool things about being a participant, like unexpected, is that I have taught online classes before, but I have never taken an online class before. And it was super interesting to be on the student side of things. And, you know, I've been one of those teachers way back before COVID that was like, no, my class cannot go online. And I'm really excited about all the things that you can do online and the ways that you can learn. So I'm not teaching online right now, but I've been really enjoying and thinking about it. You know, a lot of things have been ticking because this is such a great opportunity to like see how the learning experience is from the other side. So I would definitely advise faculty to do it. Besides all the skills you're picking up, you're also getting a chance to like see what online learning is like as a student.
Well, and to see how online learning is when it's a well-designed online course, which is not always the experience of students. So you know, they actually do walk the walk when you're doing this, when you're developing this course.
My first, you know, when I first did ACUE, I was in, I think the first cohort of it. And I, you know, got into the course and I was like, oh my God, everything I've been doing, it is not nearly as nice as this. And it's not nearly as fluid and as engaging. And so, you know, that was something that I was like, oh, it can be different. It can be so much nicer. And so it definitely motivated me for in that way as well. So thank you for sharing that, because I identify with that a lot. Michael?
There's two modules in particular I'm looking forward to. One is helping students persist in their studies, mostly because with the math courses I've taught at this university and other universities, burnout has definitely been a problem sometimes with students just running out of gas by the end of the semester. And so, you know, motivation to keep going, pace themselves, and, you know, just having revision opportunities there, I think, is something that could really help with my students and my teaching style. Not to mention, you know, mathematics is sort of the quintessential, when am I going to use this in real life sort of subject that students seem to have. So connecting life learning, life skills and career goals to what they learn in these classes, like something that I'm interested in and looking forward to seeing. The other being embracing diversity in your classroom. Again, from personal experience, diversity has always been kind of a big problem in STEM courses and mathematics. Even little things like, you know, making sure that all students have a calculator is something that, you know, I've learned sometimes different people from different backgrounds. It's just a lot more different. It's a lot more difficult for some people to just have a $25 calculator for everyday mathematics purposes as opposed to others. So being able to, you know, eliminate, you know, those microaggressions and stereotype threats and, you know, just making sure that the classroom is more inclusive for everybody is something that I think would benefit me quite a bit. And I'm looking forward to trying that out. Advice, I guess, would be, you know, I'd echo what other people have said here that, you know, it seems, I guess any online course, when you look at it all together, can seem overwhelming, but, you know, proper pacing, just making sure that you take things one step at a time, one module at a time, can, you know, really help you out, and has really helped me out with this course and getting everything done and, you know, staying on track, not falling behind, and making sure that, you know, I learn what I need to and I implement what I need to when I can. So.
Yeah, I'll echo the pacing in terms of advice for people thinking about it. I appreciated that, I don't know, Maggie, if it was you or the course in general said, you know, as I was deciding whether to do it, it's about 2 to 3 hours a week. Think about, it being about 2 to 3 hours a week. And I thought, yeah, but is it really often you'll hear that? And then it's like 5 hours a week of this thing that expands. It really has been that for me. Not usually less, but not usually more either. And almost always about 2 hours of engaging with the module through the course interface, and then another hour that's sort of lesson planning. So I don't know if I count that as ACUE time or just normal course prep time. So that's about how the time frame has worked for me. And I've actually been glad to have that, because so much of the work I do feels like it's never ending. Like it's just this very large thing that I'm trying to approach. And so there are times during the week where I'd be like, I'm going to go do a half hour of this program. I'm going to go do another hour of this program, and then it's done. And there has been some satisfaction in having a thing in the week that is, I don't know, that I can start and finish and it's done. That's so if a person had those 2 to 3 hours, I'd say, yeah, it's been a positive thing to slot in.
We have a few minutes left. Anyone else want to share, or did everyone get a chance to speak to that point?
Yeah, I'll just very briefly say, in terms of the advice I would give to other people thinking about participating, I would encourage them to do it. Because, as others have mentioned, it's a really effective use of your time. I feel like, again, the online course is designed so well. Every single part of the module is a good place to invest your time. I've never felt like my time is being wasted at any part of the program, which can sometimes, be the case when you're doing certain things online. I also have found it motivating whenever I come across a strategy or, a best practice technique. It feels like this new shiny thing that I can take into the classroom on the next day. And that's really motivating for me as kind of a teacher who's been in the college classroom for a while. Yeah, I don't know if that's advice or just more like a commercial for signing up, but that's what came to mind.
Thank you. Excellent. Any last minute thoughts or?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just approach it with sincerity. That would be my best advice.
I would say too, I mean, because yeah, I'm now thinking I sound like a commercial too, like do it like, I mean, I don't know how long the cohorts will last. So, it's grab the opportunity while it's there kind of thing. But if you want to be in a place where you can be working on teaching, if you're really heavy with other commitments to maybe research or service or something else, it can become a little crazy. And as someone who's always stupidly overextended, I'm the one that's behind in the cohort. I am the loser. But I am going to catch up. I think, yeah, November hit like a freight train. So if this continues, which I hope it does, do it, when you're ready to be really focused on teaching, because I think that you'll get more out of it.
And I do have to say that you have one of the 2 toughest time periods of the 4 cohorts we've done. The 2020-21 cohort was kind of tough with the transition to remote and online teaching. And with this, the transition to Brightspace has been challenging because it's been a lot of additional work that everyone's had to do on top of this. So congratulations on staying with it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for all of your perspectives and experiences on ACUE. Hopefully, in the next few weeks, we can start strong again and get into leading the first day of class, right? That's the next module. So good luck, everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie.